Enough from me. Can I welcome, and might you welcome, Adrian Lodders from Sunbury Radio.
Oh, thank you. I'm assuming everyone can hear me all right. So everyone, my name's Adrian. I was the former president of Sunbury Radio up into our last AGM. By day, I'm actually an IT consultant. I'll do anything from fixing computers to working in data centres. I've been at night time finishing off my master's degree. In this last week, I finally finished my last few exams. So if I look tired or I start rambling on, just let me know because I'm really exhausted. And just for fun, I found after getting involved in community radio that throwing yourself out into an aeroplane is a beautiful thing to do. So I took up skydiving. I'm at about 22 solo skydives, and that's a picture of me the first time I ever did it by myself. And the good thing is, I'm still here, so it's not as bad as it seems. Over the last 2 years, when I was managing Sunbury Radio as president, one thing that I had was a massive desire to change how the station actually ran. We had a lot of people that were involved with the station, but nothing was moving forward. What we had was infrastructure at the station that had been around since 1997, that hadn't been invested into and was completely at the end of its life. Our broadcast that was going out to listeners was out of phase, so any of the techs in the room will know, which meant that if you tried to listen to it on a mono radio or things like that, it would break up, and I'm sure that if ACMA hunted us down, we would have gotten into a bit more trouble. So there are a few things. So we end up sort of endeavouring on doing a number of things. One was to rebuild our studios, rebuild our broadcast infrastructure, rebuild our brand, rebuild our website, but we also needed to rebuild our outside broadcast system. So these are a few of the things which I just want to quickly cover in the next 30 odd minutes and hopefully have time for questions as well. So to begin with, we're going to show you our kind of cheap, off-the-shelf broadcast system. So our problem was we were using one of these good old matrix units using dial-up technology. It provided low fidelity sound. It was volunteer intensive. We had to have people be able to set it up, understand how the system worked, and we also had to have people back at the studio literally sitting there reading a newspaper just to make sure that the audio didn't drop out, so that way we didn't get any dead air. It had long setup times. I think in one case it took 3 hours to actually set it up and about 2 hours to bring it all down, because we actually had to run analog phone cable all the way around from different buildings in order to be able to dial back into the studio. And it required tons and tons of equipment to use. Now, for the average presenter out there that's been involved with radio for quite some time, this is nothing too scary. You've got your mixer, you've got your computer with all your jingles, sponsorship announcements, and a CD player just in case you need to put something to air when the computer crashes. And that computer was still running DRS 2006 for anybody out there that has ever had to endure that software. This took us probably on average anywhere between 1.5 to 2 hours to set up and to try and make things work. But it was getting frustrating. We could only, on average, when we had enough volunteers, maybe do 1 or 2 outside broadcasts per year, just because it was too resource intensive. What we really wanted to do was have the ability to set up an outside broadcast system somewhere that was quick, that was cheap, that was reliable, and that could be managed by just one person. So if there was a community event on or a community forum, we could go there, we could set it up, and we could just be done with it. But the great thing was it also meant that we'd also be interacting with our community more. So what we wanted was a few requirements. We wanted 4G to our studio, so no more dial-up phone lines. We wanted high quality audio, actual stereo audio. As I said, one person, fast setup times, and really no extra equipment. We wanted it something that was all in one. It had the music, it had the sponsorship stings, and it also had to be affordable as well. So there we go, I'm jumping a bit too far here. So what we ended up coming up with was this little device just over here, which is essentially an iPad with a 4-channel mixer built into it. This stuff can be brought anywhere online. It can be brought from places such as, I think we brought it from Store DJ. I think it cost us about $400 for the mixer and about $500 or $600 for the actual iPad. So we went out there and brought a new iPad. And the little device next to it is just a cheap $50 tablet, which lets us know if it's actually working online, and it literally is one button operation. You push one button, Once it's all up and running, it'll connect to the studio, it'll finish playing off the last song, we'll be straight on air. And as soon as we finish, we hit disconnect, it drops out, the computer back at the studio automatically cuts over to spare music. And best of all, if we do have any dropouts for whatever reason, there is no dead air. It'll just cut back to the next track until we've got some tech person who can go in there and have a quick look. Really simple. It took us a number of times to try and get it right. We were originally trying to run software on computers, trying to work out what worked well. We tried software such as TeamSpeak, going all the way through to other systems. But what we found actually worked the best was just using the technology that we already use for internet streaming. It's cheap, it's reliable. Okay, there's a 15 to 30 second delay, but the listeners at home don't know that there's a bit of delay in the music. However, it actually worked really quite well for us. So I think, what was our shopping list? An iPad Air, which is about $700, an Alesis 4-channel mixer. Now, it doesn't have to be Alesis. There's other companies out there that produce similar type of technology. An application called iBroadcast. This is actually made by a developer in Australia. So if you buy it, you are supporting Australian. Always a good thing. Very simple software to use, and it uses the exact same technology that we use for doing our internet streaming. We also use a Icecast HK server. Once again, you don't have to set up a server. You can just purchase a internet streaming service for $10 in the US or in Australia if you want. It'll do the same job. 4G modem most of the time. I just use my own personal mobile phone. Saves the station money, and most of the time we can get a pretty decent signal out of it. And a playout PC with an application called Radio DJ. Some of you may have already seen this software before. It's free, it's very powerful, and it just makes me smile because it actually does a really good job. Once it's set up, you can pretty much leave it alone, and it actually takes care of any issues that we have when it comes to dropouts and things like that. And I'll actually be able to show you that software in a few moments' time. So really, for less than $1,000, we could actually have an all-in-one outside broadcast system that would allow us to have all of our music all on the one device, have up to 4 channels of input all at once, be able to have one person set it up and use it, and if there was a dropout for whatever reason, we didn't need anyone to be back at the studio to fix it up. Quite simple, nothing too special there. You could use Wi-Fi, anything that's got an internet connection with relatively decent broadband would do the trick. For us, obviously we've got our server back at the studio, and once again, you don't need to have it there. You can just pay $5 a month with Rely Stream or whichever company that you're already using. Does the job without an issue. The magic is the software that we use at our studio. Sunbury Radio is actually located on an old lunatic asylum. So there's usually talks about ghosts and phantoms up there. So we actually call our system Mr. Walker in honour of the Phantom for anyone who loves comic books, I think it is. I didn't create it, it's just how it's always been. This software, we're planning on bringing in permanently to take care of all of our music in the future. But the main thing for us is, as you can see up there, it says Next Gen Stream 123. We obviously need to give it a name because we want it to sound special. We actually have multiple Next Gen streams now. So what we can do is we've got Stream 1, which is the device that we normally use. And Stream 2, that's actually the Victorian Blues Appreciation Society. Whenever they want to actually stream live music to broadcast on air, they've actually built their own version of this, and we just gave them their own password. So they just give us the audio stream, and the person who's doing the show just listens into the music, cues it in. Once he's finished, he just disconnects it, and all of a sudden we've got some live Australian content going to air from Melbourne to Sunbury, and then broadcasting around to our community. Really useful software. It's free. Anyone who's got some basic tech skills to set up a database, once you've set it up, you never look back. It's really nice to use, and for the price, you really can't complain. One of the big issues to consider, though, is when you're doing an outside broadcast is signal strength, and we found this to be a bit of a problem to begin with. Fortunately, though, we do have the internet, which does come in handy. The other big problem was weather, as well as needing just some basic technical skills. You do need someone initially to at least set this up and train people in how to use it. Once it's up and running, we've had some of our, what's a nice way of putting it, some of our presenters that are really good at going to air, but not necessarily the best at using technology, being able to pick up this equipment and be able to use it quite easily. When it comes to coverage, one of the best things you can do is there's a website called Oz Towers. These guys somehow have a database of pretty much every phone tower in Australia. And all you need to do is put in the details of a location, and what it'll give you is a map of where the nearest tower is. So sometimes what we'll do is, we've got Clark Oval there, which is our local football field. So when we're doing a live broadcast, one of the biggest broadcasts we do is actually in honour of a number of people from our community that passed away in the MH17 disaster that occurred. One of the local football players, his parents were on that. So it's a very important memorial match. So we'll always do a yearly broadcast from this location. But with this website, what we can do is we can see where the nearest tower is, and we have a 4G modem that just sits inside a plastic case, and we just sit it on top of an old microphone stand, and it just points down the road. Your normal 4G modem will last for more than 5 hours once it's fully charged, and on average, I don't think we use more than about 2 to 4 gigabytes in a 5-hour broadcast session using this technology. The only time we've probably ever had an issue was when we had a whole bunch of people standing around the same device with their mobile phone. Once we told them to leave, just even spread out by a couple of metres. We've never had an issue since. If you want to have something like this though, there is one other thing to worry about. It's this thing here. We did actually have this occur once, overheat protection on the iPad. We last year were running a Carols by Candlelight event. And the iPad was being exposed to sunlight, and all of a sudden our audio dropped, and we're going, oh, wait a minute, what's happened? Turns out the radiant heat from the sun was enough to actually shut down the iPad. So if you do something like this, it just needs to be under shade. We had this problem fixed within about 2 minutes. We literally just pulled the iPad out, waved it in the air to cool it off, plugged it back in. We were up and running, and we just said, sorry to everyone for the dropout. We hope that you enjoyed the jingle bells that were playing before we dropped out. From technical skills, this is actually the interface that we use on the actual device. So what we've got is the mixer, and we have all of our music that we want to play. We have the ability to show our connection to the studio, and 9 times out of 10, once this is turned on and it's set, we just leave it. We just play whatever we need to when we don't actually have content going to air, and then we just come straight back to it. Once again, really simple. The actual system itself isn't very big. This is literally our entire outside broadcast facility for about 90% of the broadcasts that we do. Since we started using this, we on average probably do anywhere between 15 to 20 outside broadcasts per year now compared to what we were doing previously. This was actually used yesterday for the memorial service, for Remembrance Day, and we've used it in many other locations as well. We've used it for when the Victorian Blues Appreciation Society would do their event in Melbourne, and literally all we did was we just took a feed from the back of their mixer, plugged it into ours, turned it on, and we just walked away. This thing was so reliable that we were actually able to go out, have dinner, come back, and it was still working perfectly fine. Once again, we've all seen the other systems out there, be it Matrix, be it Tieline, be it whatever else. If you're a small community radio station, you don't have the money. So something like this for us is fantastic. But it also gives us the ability that if we find something better out there on the market, if we find better software than what we're currently using, we just change the software. We just reinstall something new. Or if we need to do some recording, it acts as a 4-channel recorder for GarageBand. When we first bought this equipment, people said what you're trying to do is, it just won't work. No one had ever even thought about marrying an application with a 4-channel mixer and having all their music stored on it. For us, it took us about a year worth of trial and error, but this thing has just been fantastic, and it's allowed us to engage with our community in a way that we haven't before, especially when we're located on a hill on at an old university that's not currently in use. We need to engage with our community, and this thing here has probably been the best way for us to actually get re-engaged with the community and actually start gauging interest with people in terms of whatever it might be, such as I said yesterday, what we did yesterday with Remembrance Day, going through to when we actually had a candidate forum for the local council elections that just took place a few weeks ago. This thing is probably our biggest lifesaver at the moment, and it's very easy to use. Literally, I've got my phone turned on right now. I can just quickly push the on button, that's connected, and I'll see if I can do it. I make no guarantees here because what do they say? Whenever you try and do something live, you're bound to make a mistake. But that's okay. this is actually our studio live at the moment. Obviously, we're not using this for broadcast at the moment. I can literally just take that, drop it in, hit play, and that'll just take the feed straight away. So if I start using this microphone, if there was someone in the studio, they'd start being able to pick up on anything that I was actually putting to air. And if it drops out at all, it'll then just go on and play whatever the next song is within our playlist. Once again, very simple to use. Very rare that I actually use something like TeamViewer to actually get into it, but it does give us that ability. And once again, we only need one person for most outside broadcasts when it's things such as community forums or other types of, or other small type events like that. Obviously, we're going to have this here a little bit later, so if anyone wants to have a look at it, write down the details. I want you guys, if you like it, build your own. Work out something that makes it work even better and share the information with everybody else, because if we can make things like this ourselves as small community radio stations, we can easily take on the big boys. We can do it better, we can do it easier, we can do it at less cost, and we can show that we know how to play with the big boys and actually have quite a bit of fun along the way. So I do enjoy this kind of stuff, obviously being a tech person, but once again, we've got people at the studios. They can use this without any issue with us at all. It was used yesterday without any of the technical team. Is that right, Daniel? Yeah, no one from the technical team helped set this up yesterday for our outside broadcast, and it worked perfectly. So I would really love you guys to be able to have a look at it, and if you can come up with something even better than this, come to the next CBAA conference, and I wouldn't mind stealing your ideas either.